Hey, this is Jeff with Assigner.com. I'm going to show you how to use our import feature, which can be used to bring in a list of officials or a list of games into the system. Now, this assumes that you have either your games or your officials in a spreadsheet format, and it's certainly a lot easier if you have games and officials in a spreadsheet to import that into the system than it is to enter them one by one, especially if you have a lot of games or if you have a lot of people that you want to bring in. So we'll start with the games process. So if we click on games and then choose all games, up at the top here you'll see that there's a link that you can click to import a spreadsheet. Now, as far as the format goes, is that the format itself is actually pretty flexible. We do provide a template that you can use to import games or officials into the system. But if you have games or people that are coming from another system, the chances are pretty good is that we'll be able to import that file directly. This is what the demo file looks like. So if you notice across, there's a couple requirements that Assigner has. The first thing is that the first row is going to be your column heading. So in this case here, I've got date, time, venue, age group, home team, away team, league, and gender. The game type we've left off. It's blank. We don't have that to import. But so the first requirement is that that top row is all column headings, and then the other requirement is that each game has to be on its own row. So you'll see that I've got a total of, looks like 18 games that are in this particular spreadsheet, and we'll show you how those can be imported into the system. The other thing that Assigner.com requires with your spreadsheets is that they're in what's called a CSV format. So if you just have a regular Excel file, what you may need to do in order to get it to be recognized by Assigner.com is to save it in a CSV format. To do that, you're just going to pull down the File menu to Save As. And then what you'll do is choose from the file format here, is instead of it being Excel workbook, is that you're going to choose comma separated values. Now, I'm using a Mac, but it works really the same way regardless of whether you're on a Mac or whether you're on a Windows computer. So do a Save As. In this case here, we'll call this Games New. Choose the CSV format, which is already selected here for us, and then click Save. So we'll do is click on the Choose button and then choose our file. Click Submit. So the first thing that Assigner will do is it will show you some of the information on your spreadsheet. Now, its goal is really to make sure that the columns in your spreadsheet, the way that you've defined them, match up with the data fields that Assigner.com is expecting. So what it's going to show you on this first column here is these are all of the names of the column headings. This comes right from your spreadsheet, and so we'll see it's got date, time, venue, age group, home team, away team, all of these. So this is the information from your spreadsheet. The second column, this is what you're going to check to make sure that your columns are going to match up with the data fields that Assigner will import your data into. So for example, here you call this column date, and Assigner.com made a guess as to say that I think that you're going to it's going to take this information and put it into the date field. It's going to do the same thing with time, venue, age group, and everything else. Now it's guessed correctly on some of these, but for example, if you had, let's say instead of your spreadsheet, instead of calling it away team, let's say it called it visiting team, you might see something that looks like this where it says skip this column. And so if you do, or if something doesn't look like it matches up, is that you'll need to go over and choose the correct field for this data to be imported into. So we want this particular column of information to drop into the away team field for each of these games. The other thing with games is that you have to choose an officiating pattern. So that's the number and types of officials that are going to be assigned to each game. So what you'll do is you'll choose one of the patterns up above. And so this case here is that all of the games that I'm importing, we're going to assign 2 officials to these games. Now, if you have a whole bunch of games and the officiating pattern varies from game to game depending on the level. So if you have your little kids games that have less officials on them, or maybe just one, and then your older kids that might have more than just one official, and if you want to import those all in one go without separating them out into their own individual spreadsheets, you can add a column in your spreadsheet that says pattern and then match it up the same way that I showed you with choosing the field name. So the one thing that you want to make sure that if you do that is that whatever you call the officiating pattern that you want in your spreadsheet, it has to be exactly the same as the pattern in Assigner. So, for example, as if you're doing baseball and you want 2 umpires on a particular game, but Assigner calls it 2 officials in here, and your spreadsheet says 2 umpires instead of 2 officials. Assigner's not going to know what to do with that. So as long as there's a match, it should import those as well, so that you don't have to split your spreadsheet out into one separate sheet per officiating pattern. So this all looks good. So what we'll do is we'll click the submit button, and that'll kick off the import process, and it'll bring those games into the system. And in this case here, it looks like everything looks good. It imported 18 games. If there were any errors, so for example, if there were some fields that were missing or anything like that, it would be indicated here. And then also, if there is any kind of an issue, is that you'll get an email summary that gives you the specifics of what the error was, and then also which row it was, and that kind of thing. So if we go back to games, is we'll see that we now have the 18 games from the spreadsheet imported into the system. So that's how that works. Now, if you are looking to import officials, it's almost exactly the same process. So if we'll click on people, and then we'll click on import, and we'll pull down a sample file that shows what it looks like to import officials. Looks very similar. So just a first name, last name, email address, home phone, cell phone. If you wanted to add additional fields, you can do that as well, and I'll show you here in a minute where you can find the information in our help desk that shows the different fields that you can import into Assigner. So we'll choose the file, click submit, and then we'll do the same thing. So it's gonna match up. So the first name in our spreadsheet, first name in assigner.com, last name, email address, home phone, cell phone. All of that looks good. So we'll click submit. And we're done. So if we go over here, we'll see that we have some more officials in here. All of the ones from our test spreadsheet had the word test next to them, so they're pretty easy to find in amongst everything else that we have on this particular site. As far as the actual fields that can be imported, is if you click on the help icon at the top of the screen, scroll down, we have an article here that says import from a spreadsheet. This will go through the process that I just showed you here in this video, but then what this also does is this will tell you the different fields that you can import for games, as well as for your officials. And you can check that out just by going into our Help Center. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with us.